the Around the NFL podcast. Sean Payton's official fan club.
From Sky Sports headquarters in London, England, it's Around the NFL. I am Dan Hanzus, and I am in a conference room filled with some heroes. Gregg Rosenthal, Marc Sessler. There are no more undefeated teams in the National Football League. And Marc Sessler, the reason both the undefeated teams no longer are undefeated is because of the Cleveland Browns and the New York Jets. What world do we live in?
This season needed this. I really feel like it did, and it's not because I have roots as a Browns fan, and it's not because of your Jets fandom.
Doesn't hurt.
It doesn't hurt.
Right.
I mean,
also the roots are also a full-grown tree that you're still
all right.
perfectly living.
Today, I sat under the shade of that beautiful tree and felt something, and
You are the
PJ
tree.
Walker made me feel something. We'll get into it, but this is the unlikely, unpredictable nature of this league, and it's like we're still learning about these teams. And I would say even more from the Jets angle, there is just this renewed sense of possibility.
Well, I think it's from every angle. I mean, let's say what it is. This is one of the most memorable days in the history of the Around the NFL podcast. It's almost 1 a.m. We're at Sky Sports Studios. Our day started over at the Hot Toddy more than 12 hours ago. Well more than that. And your
14,
teams
14.
just took out the two best teams in the NFL who hadn't had a loss today. And we got professional footballers yelling on us from the stands. Inside jokes from the game.
It's all
happening.
We were walking, and again, and we're going to get to the game, the Titans-Ravens game, that we were in attendance, and we did a lot of great stuff on the field. So many great interactions and fun interactions with listeners of this show. It's almost overwhelming, quite frankly, and really cool. But one of those interactions and one of those shout-outs when we were down at the field came from
Rob Holding. Crystal Palace's Rob Holding, formerly of Arsenal. And, you know, we're plugged in on other sports to some degree, or to not to some degree, because Nick Pike from NFL UK, when we walked past him, Rob Holding shouted down, "Hey, heroes!" And he's like, you know, he's like, "Here we are at the Hot Toddy." It's like, that's awesome. Another great British listener. And he's like, "By the way," Nick said, "that is a professional Premier League player. That is Rob Holding." It was like about 715,000 followers on Instagram. I just followed him. We'll see if he follows back. My son Colton is a huge soccer fan, so I just immediately texted and said, like, "Do you know anything about this guy?" And like, I mean, he knows everyone, so his mind is going to be blown.
Wow,
that's who's listening to this show, and he's going to be listening to this right now, hopefully.
And it's a day that that so many crazy things have happened, and the fact that it's 1 a.m. here, we should be tired, but when those certain outcomes of today's games end the way they do, we are filled with energy and life, and we will not be alone. We're going to do the first half of the show today, and then for the first time ever, we are going to hand the show off for the back half of games, including Sunday Night Football, Bills-Giants, to the great Nick Shook and the great Patrick Claybon. Very capable hands to take us home. So we're gonna go through what, 7 or 8 games.
We're going through 7. They got 6.
All right, so let's do that. And I think there's no reason to delay any further. Let's get into how these undefeated teams were knocked off. And yes, let's start at an electric Meadowlands.
Well, here we go. In motion goes Zacchaeus. Shotgun set for Jalen Hurts. Gainwell to his left. Play clock at 3. Takes the snap. Drops the throw on 4th and 8. Well protected. Looks left. Heaves a bomb down the middle of the field. It is broken off by Jordan Whitehead. The Jets are going to win it. The Jet defense needed to come up big one last time. And come up big they did. What a day for the Jet defense.
What a day indeed. Oh, in New York City and London. Oh, my goodness. What a day for Robert Saleh's defense, which, after giving up 14 points in the first half, including the opening Philly drive, but that covered 9 minutes of game time and went 19 plays on a very iffy touchdown overturn by the officials, completely lock down the Eagles in the second half of this game and create huge plays. They've been creating turnovers this year, which their defense did not do last year. And boys, missing their top 3 cornerbacks, including Sauce Gardner. They shut out the mighty Eagles in the second half and steal the game on an interception, Breece Hall touchdown run, and then that 4-and-out stop to close the game. 2014, Jets 3-3 at the bye. Eagles fall to 5-1.
It is a season-changing win because Dan and I, we were having this conversation during the game as they were playing tough, and I'm comparing. I'm like, Zach Wilson is almost turning into like the new Drew Lock. Like he's developed into maybe a capable backup level, which is a step forward, and maybe they could survive. And if only they had the schedule that they had in 2022, I think this team actually could maybe win 9-10 games. But this schedule's been so brutal. But you know what? You just got through the worst part of the schedule, and you finally stole a win or for the second time against one of the best teams in the entire NFL, and you escape this early part of the season at 3-3, and you look at the rest of the back half, and I don't suddenly think Zach Wilson's going to change, but I don't think his defense is going to change either. I think it's going to be one of the best defenses in the league, and I just think they have something building in terms of who they are and that they're just going to be around. At 2-4, I don't know if I would have felt that, but at 3-3 with a win over the Eagles and the Bills, I just think they're going to be around. They're going to be part of this season, and circling back to week 1 and everything that happened there, I think that's all you can ask.
They refuse to go away. I mean, if there was a time to collapse and disappear, it would have been 5 minutes into the season. They beat the Buffalo Bills, widely considered like a top 2 team in the AFC. You nearly beat the Chiefs, and you should have. That call at the end of that game changes everything there, and you think maybe the Jets are just absolutely snake bit. You've just beaten the Eagles. If you knew before the season you'd have those 3 wins, you say, of course Aaron Rodgers is guiding this team. Instead, it's like, It's Zach Wilson is sort of changing and evolving in little ways. He didn't make terrible mistakes today. He's still what he is, but this is a great coaching job by Robert Saleh, and it's a great team development, team building.
Here's the deal. Yes, Wilson has been better the last 3 weeks than he was previously, but Wilson did not make throws in many situations. He took sacks in this game. He didn't turn the ball over, but they really had no business winning this game because the defense continued to get stop after stop and give Zach Wilson and the offense the ball back. And for the most part, they couldn't do anything. And that's why if you're an Eagles fan, we just watched last week one of the what I thought was the worst loss of the year, which was the Ravens blowing that game against the Steelers. I'm not going to say it's at that level, but it's not far off for the Eagles. The Eagles are going to watch this film and be sick to their stomachs because they knew there is no way, after all the frustrations of the game, there is no way Zach Wilson is going to take the Jets down the field to win this game. All Jalen Hurts has to do is not make the wrong decision, but he does. He throws the interception. Who had the pick? The interception was by, get this right. They got Adams. They got the interception, took it all the way back to the Philly 8, and that gave the Jets the only chance they were going to get a touchdown there. And then there was a big decision to be made by Robert Saleh and the Jets. If the Eagles let you score, do you let it happen, or do you kind of kneel down at the 1? The Jets go in. And it was thought at the time that was a bad decision because the Eagles got the ball back with 1:46 and 2 timeouts on the clock. And yet, the Jets defense stood tall one more time. So even though you could quibble or even say Saleh made a big mistake there, this defense that had stood up all throughout that half did it one more time. And it really is, yes, a landscape-changing win for the Jets.
The Eagles had a ton of injuries. We'll get to that, too, because I think that was a big takeaway from this game and important for them moving forward. But ultimately, there's more on defense than offense, and they had their best players out there other than Lane Johnson on offense. And so for the Jets defense to turn them away over and over again, and the quarterbacks that they faced are impressive. We got Robert Saleh giving us some good quotes.
Here's some Bob.
Through these first 6 weeks, we've played a gauntlet of quarterbacks. And I know we haven't gotten all wins, but we've embarrassed all of them.
Wow. It's not wrong.
You know what? I think after what Saleh's been through and this team and this fan base has been through, it's okay to puff out your chest here a little bit. And I'll take the L because as recently as the first half last week against Denver, I'm thinking to myself, man, this Robert Saleh, I don't know if this is the right guy in place. This team seems like they're going down the tubes. And what I need to give him credit for, and a little mea culpa, is this defense, which he leads, he's a defensive coach, has this ability. Although they don't typically start strong. They start to build up. They're like a steam train where it takes a while for them to warm up. But once they do, they start to just build off each possession, and they make big plays. And one thing that defense that was rated very well last year didn't do is turn the ball over. They turned the ball over a ton this year, and which is
4 times tonight.
Huge because this offense, and we could say he's a Drew Lock type figure at this point, Zach Wilson, they're not going to score a lot of points. The defense is going to have to give them short fields, and it's going to have to do game-changing plays, and they did both of that.
Yeah, the Jets 4.1 yards per play. You know, 244 total yards. You look at that before the game and think, well, the Jets did not get this thing done. It was a couple of years ago that we were at Hot Toddy watching the Robert Saleh game where he's pumping his fists up and down the sideline. And it's like that was when it started to bubble up that Robert Saleh, the Niners defensive coordinator, was like this head coaching material. And with that Niners team, they had a lot of injuries on defense, it seemed, all the time. And he would still coach up guys behind them to play just as well, and they were so resilient. And you were missing all sorts of quarterbacks tonight, the New York Jets. And it's like you found a way to do it and turn the Eagles into complete, absolute, normal humans. Like, they didn't look like they normally do. I mean, this was Jalen Hurts, this was a meltdown by Jalen Hurts.
Here's the thing.
We have not seen that.
Hurts was actually pretty good for most of this game. He was let down by some big drops by his receivers. He kept plays alive throughout this game and was almost impossible for the Jets to bring down despite an active pass rush. But, you know, he still turned the ball over 3 times, 3 interceptions. And the last throw, again, that is in the running for one of the worst throws, probably the worst throw of his career when you factor in the way he made the decision, which was a poor decision. The back
really bad.
Threw off his back foot, knowing the situation that you didn't need to get a first down. You didn't have to force that. That's a very, very difficult loss for him.
Well, and to go 4 and out on the ensuing possession, in which they had plenty of time to try to go down the field. In the first down included, you know, his best receiver, A.J. Brown, who went for another 131. He does it every week, yelling at him. So it was about as big of a meltdown as Jalen Hurts has had in a game since that playoff loss to the Bucs. I don't come out of this game overly concerned about the Eagles long term. Like, they've had some wobbly games. It's a long season. But they do have a ton of injuries. Lane Johnson is one of the most important players on their team. We'll see if that's a long-term injury.
X-ray is negative, but we don't know how serious it is.
Jalen Carter, Darius Slay, both didn't suit up for the game. Reed Blankenship got hurt during the game. So did Justin Brown, Sidney Brown, and Eli Ricks. Those are all in the secondary. So when all of the injuries happen in one position, that's a concern for the Eagles in the upcoming weeks.
You're 3-3, the Jets. You go into your bye week, and they've been through a gauntlet. It's been a rough slate. And I think even with Aaron Rodgers, you could have looked at this opening 6 games and say 3-3, I might take that. And so after that, you have the Giants, the Chargers, and the Raiders. The Jets suddenly are in a different place in a different time right now. And it's like, I think Jets fans who have been through hell, deep into Hades, you're coming back up to terra firma and you can breathe.
And this has very rarely happened. I've really thought this, but the Jets fans have been awesome in that building now. That it was a great vibe in week 1. Great vibe in there. It's feeling a little bit like a home field advantage because the fans like this team, and they're a fun team to root for, and they have that underdog mentality with Rodgers out. Very exciting times. I'm thrilled.
Hey, maybe he won't be out for long. He's out there on the field without any crutches with all the cameras on him. I know what you're doing. I know you're getting paid millions from McAfee.
Aaron, come on.
I mean, I would take the millions, too, if you could do that for millions of dollars.
Mark, do you want to talk about the Browns?
I would like to.
Let's talk about the Browns. Oh, what a Sunday show!
Between the hashes. 41
From
yards
London, baby.
for Jake Moody. Wisnowski kneels at the 31 to give the Niners the lead. Snap is down. The kick is up. The kick is no good! It's no good! And the Browns will beat the 49ers 19-17. He pushed it wide to the right.
Oh, we know that, boys. Bring on the bongos. Come. Cleveland. Defense. Schwartz. Oh, the rookie kicker of the 49ers. Jake Moody missed a 41-yard field goal with 6 seconds to play. And the Cleveland Browns, another inspired defensive effort. 19-17 the win. And that was, of course, Andrew Siciliano with the call. Our friend of the show, colleague in NFL media.
Browns fan.
And filling in, of course, for the great
Jim Donovan.
And doing a great job at it. And you could hear in Siciliano's voice, because we know Andrew. He's born and bred. He loves the Browns. And that excitement, Mark, it was shared by Cleveland fans the world over, including the man with the roots.
I mean, I've talked with Andrew so many mornings in our newsroom through these up and down Brown seasons, and I honestly, to hear his voice right there, like since he was a young boy, he's been rooting for this team, and he's professional about it obviously now, but like that's got to be a moment he'll never forget, and it has to go down as one of the bigger Browns regular season wins of this century.
Who's the quarterback today?
It's P.J. Walker, and you know what? I said like the one. I think I told you guys like early in the game. It was like P.J. Walker looks good in this Browns uniform. I just kind of like I can root for this guy, and like he's an imperfect creation. He threw a couple picks in this game, but
As a football player.
He kept fighting though.
Yeah,
and I think
I
we've seen
agree
it
with his
before.
mom, Mrs. Walker. Actually, PJ is a perfect creation.
All right. Well, you know, I don't need perfect, but I need someone I can root for, and it also like the Jets. At times they're playing around their offense because they're really affected by not having Nick Chubb, yet their running backs, Jerome Ford and company, stepped up today. Kareem Hunt stepped up today. There was big plays by Amari Cooper. I love the fact that P.J. Walker, who really had, there's no preseason with this team. There was no training camp. He comes it off the street, and he ran the offense competently. They trusted him to make big throws, and it just actually like last year, Amari Cooper is stepping up in a big way, but this story of this game is the defense.
Right.
And on Thursday, I asked, like, can someone make Brock Purdy look uncomfortable? Can it be this defense? Is Cleveland going to do what it did? No, they're in a bad position against Baltimore with what was happening in quarterback that week. But they also gave up some big gash plays on the ground, just a couple big plays through the air, and they didn't look like themselves. Today, I mean, from wire to wire, Jim Schwartz, who was marching up and down the sideline with a real smile on his face from the beginning, I think they just knew they could make life uncomfortable for Brock Purdy. They gave up 215 yards, which is the lowest in the Shanahan era. And down the stretch, when Brock Purdy had a chance to change this game late, and you didn't have Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey went out of this game. You could factor all that in. But even before that happened, the Niners, the way we've seen them, when they have so many weapons that you can't contain them, they were contained from top to bottom. And I have to say this Cleveland defense is a difference maker.
Right. I mean, if Jake Moody makes that kick, I'm talking about how Brandon Ayuk made a couple big-time plays on that drive, made the Browns miss. But the only reason he got the chance is because the 49ers defense kept getting the ball back. The 49ers had 7 drives in the second half. It is extremely rare to get a seventh bite at the apple like Purdy did. On those 6 drives before that happened, the 49ers offense had a total of 21 yards. I mean, that is outrageous, and this game to me was different than the Jets game because the Jets game, as Dan said, like the Eagles should not have lost that game ultimately. Look, the Browns outgained the 49ers by 120 yards.
Right.
Like their defense was the most dominant part of this game. It really wasn't about the Browns offense, but they were able to run the ball in ways that they haven't since Nick Chubb was gone. Like they legitimately looked like the better team against the 49ers. And you said, the Jets might be a bigger story moving forward in terms of lasting impact. I don't know. I look at this Browns team and I think, wow, like this team, if Watson can come back healthy, like is a very dangerous team with that defense.
Yeah, even without Nick Chubb, because you look at this division and it's like, if you're the Browns with that defense, who scares you? I mean, even
it was a good day for the AFC North, I got to say. They all looked a little scarier now than they did 24 hours ago.
But like the Bengals, they don't know how to beat this Browns team. So they're in their heads by this point, and this defense is currently constituted is going to eat up all the other teams in that division, including in my mind the Ravens. I think they're just really well set up to be a team that is relevant and potentially a playoff team. I picked them as a playoff team. Obviously, when you lose Nick Chubb, you think, oh, that's a death knell. But what you're saying is right, Mark. Like, this is a difference-making defense, and you're going to see it continue to give them wins.
Yeah, they have losses against Pittsburgh, that was a frustrating Monday night loss. The Baltimore game, there was a lot happening on Cleveland's offensive side that put them in a disadvantage, but they got gashed by Baltimore. I don't know. I feel like there's no way. I thought that this San Francisco matchup would reveal Cleveland to be somewhat of a fraud. That was just my feeling, and it's like I have to give Kevin Stefanski, who I think has sort of been under a lot of fire, and, of course, Jim Schwartz, the whole coaching staff. Stefanski said basically this week that he felt that Jim Schwartz in the defense all week long, like you could tell something was going on. He said on Wednesday, if you measure a practice on Wednesday's practice by how it sounds, we had our best practice of the season. I'm like, in this modern times where you're not even hitting, I don't know what that translates to, but it's like there is an attitude and a belief in Cleveland's defense that they can go and do anything, and you see it week after week.
Well, they've given up the fewest yards through 5 games of any team, I think, ever, which is a pretty crazy stat. And the schedule eases up. The Deshaun Watson news coming into the week was he might miss multiple more weeks. It's still a very strange situation that bears
I feel like
watching.
We're not getting like we don't have the full story on the shoulder injury.
It's very rare to hear a guy is medically cleared from the coach and then he's out for 2.5 straight weeks.
See.
And now
one of the parrots that work for Watson essentially in the media will leak his side of the story soon enough.
We've pretty much been getting that.
More.
That he's feeling pain. I don't necessarily doubt that. I just feel like there's more going on. Injuries were a massive part of this story though. For the 49ers, the best team in the league coming into today, to lose Christian McCaffrey to a hip and an oblique. Obliques are a tricky injury, and then Deebo Samuel not to survive the game. That is a potentially not season-changing, but it could be something where it makes them struggle a little bit through this middle part of the season.
Shanahan, he was unsure about the extent of both and said, we don't know yet. So, yeah, it is, that Deebo is now going through another what looks to be an injury-plagued season. McCaffrey is really stayed healthy for the most part since coming to San Francisco. So now we're going to start getting tested here, as all teams do, and now it's 49ers' turn.
There's another one, too, because Trent Williams, on a play that he got rolled up on, and it looked really ugly, and he came back into the game and finished it, but left the stadium in a walking boot on his right foot. So, I mean, that's another Jenga piece right there.
Should have never gotten rid of Robbie Gould. You called it, Danny.
Hey, you gotta, when you have a kicker you can count on and depend on, you keep in the building. And I know you could, if you're a Niners fan, you could quibble with the decision there to get very conservative and settle for the 41-yard field goal rather than try to get closer. They didn't want to risk getting knocked back on some running plays that had no chance. And you could say, okay, that was Shanahan being a little cute, but you know what? Your kicker's got to hit a 41-yarder.
I know, but that's like how, and
Greg, that's not a 46-yarder. That's not a 48-yarder. Like 41 in our league in 2023 should be money in the bank.
Number one, he hasn't looked great since he was drafted, so that's on Shanahan a little bit. You got to know your kicker. Number two, like I always just feel like coaches hide behind that. Like, okay, then it's the kicker's fault. You have 45 seconds. You got a timeout over. Like you've got a great offensive team, like, oh, we don't want to get backed up running the ball. Yeah, you could also score a touchdown. You could also get down to the 10-yard line. Like, why do you stop trying with 45 seconds left? I hate it when Marty Schottenheimer did it as the Jets coach. Chargers coach. I hate it when Herm Edwards did it. It's no better now when Kyle Shanahan.
I think Shanahan, like for all the praise he gets and he deserves it, like he's a little more conservative than other coaches.
Yep. Why not? Just keep playing football.
I disagree with this one because
don't live in your fears.
What did you just say? Cleveland has potentially by yardage the best defense ever through 6 weeks.
And you also mentioned how
they have done
what
nothing
they did on drives
all day.
Half here.
Maybe he was a little spooked, but you know what?
Jordan Mason was 5 for 27. It wasn't like he was getting stoned. Come on,
make the kick.
Yeah,
and
that's it.
Right.
And if he makes the kick as he should, as a second or third round pick, then it's a very frustrating day for Cleveland, which outplayed this Goliath, and yet he misses the kick. And you know what? Good, because Cleveland was the better team in this game. Let us move on to Tampa, where the Lions were looking to say, hey, San Francisco, we're coming up in your rear view.
Goff out of the gun. There's the shotgun snap. Goff back, looking, throwing deep downfield. Wants Jameson inside the 10. Jameson makes the catch. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about, number 9. Had to rearrange, turn around, grab the football, and that's exactly what he did with Ryan Neal draped all over him.
And that's what we've been waiting on.
I see you, number 9.
Yes. Oh, my God.
That's what you're capable of, young man. Changing the game.
Remember last year when Paul Allen, Vikings radio, was getting all those great calls and it was going viral a little bit? And everybody loved Paul Allen. We had him on the show, and it's Dan Miller's year. Dan Miller is going to continue to make these really fun calls, and I think we're going to have him on the show. Lions radio. Jared Goff threw 2 touchdown passes, and the Detroit Lions take care of business, mostly on the back of their defense, in a 20-6 win over Baker Mayfield and the Bucs. On the road, the Lions are now 5-1, Greg, including 3-0 on the road. And these are the type of wins like I like to see when I'm trying to discern who are like the big boys in the league, kind of going on the road and not even playing your best game, but one side of the ball says, all right, we're going to take care of business. And in this game, it was Detroit's defense.
Right. I'm a little sick of saying, like, are they the 3rd team? Are they the 4th? They're one of the best teams in the NFL. They have been. I didn't need to see this game to see it. They were 3rd in DVOA going into this week. They are 5-1. They have won their last 4 games by a combined 60 points. All 4 of those wins have been by at least 2 touchdowns. They beat the defending champions on opening night. They just beat a 3-1 Bucs team on the road. They're in the top 5 in DVOA going into this week, not even with this game, in offense and defense. They're a complete team with a great coaching staff. They have good line play. They've got it all, and they play like their hair's on fire, and they don't make excuses. They've been as injured as any team in the league. So it's just 6 weeks, and if you're telling me, like, do I think they're the NFC favorite? No, because of how good the 49ers and Eagles rosters are.
So they're like the 3rd team.
No, but, like, it doesn't matter. The point is, like, it doesn't matter what I think, and they are one of the best teams in the NFL. They're on a relatively short list of realistic teams that can win the Super Bowl this year.
Yes.
Maybe that's a 7-team list, but they are absolutely on it, and they are playing right now as well as any team.
Greg, like, I didn't need to see this game go their way to feel like I believe in the Lions, but I'm saying, like, we're now getting to the point where 6 games is a pretty good sample size.
And you can go 16. They're 13-3 in their last 16 games.
True.
So, like, now we have a 6-game sample size of many of these teams, and the Lions, Mark, have really now showed themselves to be well coached, a team with chemistry, a team that blocks very well, that has a quarterback that can shred when given time, and a defense that has, from where they were a year ago at this time to where they are now, that is the big difference here, that they now can win games with a defense when at this time last year they were losing games.
Yeah, the defense was a total liability a year ago, and if you go into Lions games in general and say after they've been so dominant on the ground, you have a game where they ran for 40 yards. You lose David Montgomery. Gibbs is not there. Like, they could be exposed. They find other ways to win. Amon-Ra St. Brown goes off. Williams finally, and he's sort of like, if you're going to do anything, he's going to have a big play. That's sort of what he does.
He has 5 career catches. 2 of those catches are 40-yard touchdowns.
And as you said, if that continues on Sky Sports, you said he's just simply going to be shoved into Canton. I mean, that's obviously, tongue in cheek, but what they can do, it was Greg was delightful on Sky Sports. He was delightful. But I think a team, they kind of fall into this category for me of teams that just, like, their personality kind of drives them too. And I'm not comparing them to this team, but, like, the 85 Bears were, like, personality heavy and, like, didn't give an F about what anyone else thought. Like, some of those, like, the 2000 Ravens feel like that way to me. I can think of the early Pete Carroll Legion of Boom teams where it's like, it's us against the world. And it's like Dan Campbell's kind of imbued it with them. And sometimes those, you can try to do that, and we can all see that it's not true. It's phony. It's not real. It is completely real with them. And in this game, it's another example where, like, they were kind of going, I wouldn't say neck and neck, but the Buccaneers were hanging around, and the Lions were working.
Not a great game.
It wasn't a great game, but they were working too. But then they gained power as the game goes on. And I know last year I was slow to the draw with the Lions. The way that they play right now is like the kind of way I'd want to draw up a football team and how they dominate people down the stretch.
And this is why, Hard Knocks has always been one of my favorite programs, because you start to learn about the personality of the team from watching them, and that goes way back to last summer now. And I can tell you from watching that show and following this team closely now for a year and almost a year and a half since, that block that Craig Reynolds used on Carlton Davis, sending him into the next hemisphere, that sprung him on St. Brown on that big touchdown that kind of put the Lions in the driver's seat. That's what Dan Campbell's going to be losing his mind over.
That's biting kneecaps. When he says biting kneecaps, that block is biting
That's it.
kneecaps.
People didn't know what that meant, and it was easy to kind of, this guy's he's like a caveman. He's not he's not suited for this job. But that's what he was referring to. This team that will do anything for each other, even though if you don't show up in the stat box, you're going to take out the other team and punish, and that's exactly what they did. That play is so emblematic of Detroit Lions football now.
It could be a big moment in Jameson Williams' season. They kind of need that. You mentioned how they didn't have the running game today, so they really put it on Jared Goff's shoulders, and he was just on the money. This is the best season of his career to this point. Similar to his first half of the season in, 2018, when he was on fire for the Rams, but more controlled, because they were having these long drives where he was just completely on point. So even though they'd only put up 20 points, like the offense dominated the ball because they just didn't give it up in the second half. They've been so resilient, though. They'll have at some point they'll hit a dip in the season, but the way they've withstood injuries, and a lot of the players are coming back. Some of them aren't, and they had more go out even today. The way they've been missing 6 to 7 starters all year, and they're this good, that tells me I expect them to be there at the end.
And on the Bucs side of things, and first of all, I know some people like them or whatever. I think you like them, Mark. But
like who?
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers need to lose the creamsicle uniforms, because it is a loser's mentality when you put that uniform on with that color and the old Buccaneer guy on the side. All I think of is the pre-Tony Dungy, 1981 to 1996 Bucs that were impossible to watch. I think it goes into their bloodstream and they become unwatchable. So lose them.
Hold on.
Go back to the flag.
Hold on.
All right, what?
Well, all I'd say, just from a
lose them, Sessler.
No. And we were in the Sky Studio. Hannah Wilkes agreed with you. I think the one thing is on television.
Hannah Wilkes agree with me. That means it's a win.
Okay, fair, but they have
Hannah Wilkes in a big spot.
They create terrible uniform combinations with other teams. That's what I don't like about it. And it's hard to read their names on the back of the jersey. But I don't think players that were born in 1992 or 1995 give a hoot about the old uniforms.
And then
Wilkes said to drop them, so you gotta drop them.
My other point is,
I will relinquish this argument. It
doesn't matter.
Tell the Bucs to get rid of them. That's fine.
Then my other Bucs point, and if you guys have another one thrown in, then we're gonna take a break and continue on. But I said it on Thursday.
I have dense messaging about their defensive line after your
yes, Devin Tompkins' first rushing attempt for 5 yards. You got to get more.
Baker Mayfield has had a nice start to the season. I saw these 3 games as a big is it real or not? Detroit, Atlanta, Buffalo. The next 3 today in the next 3 weeks. He was not effective in this game. He kind of looked like old Baker. We'll see what he does against the Falcons next week. But against the big time defense, I thought he looked flat and was missing throws.
The only other thing
and
hanging
he was beaten
out
up
there,
as well.
Yeah, he at the end of the game, his non-throwing arm was hanging off his body, and he took a shot either to the head or to the shoulder.
It looked like right to either the shoulder or the
We'll find
chest,
out what,
yeah.
but there's a chance Baker Mayfield is out of our lives for a little bit. We'll see.
Bucko Bruce is the name. A winking pirate with a dagger clenched between his teeth.
First of all,
send him into the Tampa Bay, baby.
He's gone too?
Yeah, you lose him. He's a loser.
There were no pirates named Bruce, so there's a disconnect to begin with.
Bruce is a loser.
Put him in one of those cannons.
Get him out.
I don't think the name Bruce even existed during pirate times. I know there's still pirates out on the seas and part of our world. I get that. It's not over.
I saw the Tom Hanks film. What is it? I'm the captain now. Was that what it was? Now I'm the captain.
And it's 2 in the morning.
You're a cinephile. What was it? I'm the captain now. All right. Let's take a break, and then we'll talk London and more. I'm the captain now. All right, we are back, and now, yes, we are here in London. It's been another great week for Around the NFL. Beautiful live show on Thursday. Everybody here has been so nice to us. But the reason we were here was to cover and watch and enjoy a football game to the hot toddy, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, Ravens-Titans.
On 2nd and 7 from the Tennessee 10. Lamar up the play fake, drifting to his left under pressure, extending the play, throws complete, Zay Flowers, touchdown Ravens! Lamar extended and Zay Flowers delivered.
First NFL touchdown for Zay Flowers. Congratulations, young man.
Calm down, Rod Woodson. Jerry Sandusky with the call. Speaking of first, that was the first time the Jets ever beat the Eagles. Like, ever.
That's pretty wild.
Like, ever. All right. Back to the hot toddy. Yes, Lamar Jackson and the Ravens offense could not get out of second gear for most of this game, at least in the red zone. But the one time they did, it was Jackson to Zay Flowers, his first touchdown in the NFL, first of many. He's a good player. And the Ravens also leaned on the leg of the great Justin Tucker, who came to the land of soccer and went 6 of 6. Almost all of them chippies, and the Ravens take care of the Titans 24-16. So the Ravens, after the horrific loss against Pittsburgh, they get to 4-2, and the Titans are searching for it at 2-4. Mark, this game let's start with the Ravens side of it, and then we could do a little bit of talk about what it was like at the game. Dominated for the most part by the Ravens. Let's see what I'm sure the total yardage was absurd. 360 total yards for the Ravens, which is meh. 233 for the Titans. And they put a little bit of lipstick on the pig late. And other than a third period swing in momentum for Tennessee where they scored 10 points, this was the Ravens game all the way, and they took care of business in the end.
Yeah, the first 4 drives were field goal, touchdown. They handled their business. I think Lamar Jackson continues to have a really interesting season, and I think it's it goes kind of unnoticed or untalked about a little bit that he's in year 1 of a new offense. And when Matthew Stafford came to the Rams, it was around like week 10 or 11 or 12 when they worked their way through some problems and he started to heat up and be the best he could be. And I think Lamar Jackson's handled this challenge really well. I'm not sure that's been true of the inconsistencies and the drops and the other stuff around. I think it's hopeful that cataclysmic Steelers loss, which included so many gaffes and drops, and just come on, guys, you could have won that game. You should have won it, as Greg said, 30-something to something. And the drops dried up today. Zay Flowers played a good game. That said, I come out of it. I mean, you played an inept offense. We'll get to that. The Titans sort of just handed. The Titans could do nothing. They were an eyesore to the point where I'm like, I think they need to be giving more to this London crowd. So they really, really made it easy for Baltimore to kind of chip away. 6 field goals for Justin Tucker, a career high. I guess I come out of it saying 4-2 Ravens, good job. I have questions. I know, Greg, how you feel about the Ravens. I can't shove them into that group of Super Bowl contenders right now because I simply don't feel like I can trust them right now.
I would put them there. Certainly not if they're playing like this, but I just think they
are, though.
I know, but how you play in the middle of October is not really a great indicator
based on
of
what
what's
we've
going to happen.
seen through 6 games, you're projecting that
right,
what
and
they
based
can
on
be
that, I
rather
think
than what we've seen so far.
But based on that, I think they have a lot of baseline attributes that can win the Super Bowl. Number 1, their defense has been fantastic. I mean, you just have to win the game one certain way one week, and you can win it a different way the next week. This week, it was destroying the Tennessee Titans anytime they drop back to pass. They dropped back to pass 27 times. They ended up with 104 yards. And that was mostly Tajay Spears breaking a little swing pass from Malik Willis late in the game for 48 yards. Otherwise, they're getting 2 to 3 yards per dropback, and their defense has had dominant stretches. Guys are getting open on offense. The red zone offense was a disaster today, and it was bad last week, but it was the best in the league for the first 4 weeks. Like, Lamar looks comfortable in this offense. I'm not thrilled with how they're playing, but they've also been literally the most injured team in the league in terms of using the most starters. And that happened again today. Marcus Williams left in this game. Kyle Hamilton got kicked out of the game with a vicious hit that we saw
he deserved that.
right in front of us. And so they're always dealing with something, and there is a sloppiness to them that has to go away. If that doesn't, they're going to be bad. But today they played an inferior team. They looked like the better team. They've looked like the better team for 6 straight weeks, and they lost 2 of them. But, like, if you can look like the better team for 6 straight weeks, I feel like you got something there.
Yeah, there's definitely potential here. Absolutely. My questions are about the offense. My questions are, after all the talk, and we weren't really, to our podcast credit, like totally on board with this idea that their wide receivers, it was a fixed situation because
you were on top of this.
Zay Flowers.
I was hopeful.
Flowers has actually been better than I expected because they haven't had a great track record with hitting on wide receivers, and they have. I think Flowers has a big future. Mark Andrews is a very steady tight end who's been a little bit quiet this year, but steady. Aguilar is an issue. Odell Beckham.
Aguilar's their second best wide receiver. He's having
that's part of the issue.
That is an issue. Yeah,
Odell Beckham Jr. has been not productive and has not been an asset for this team. Rashad Bateman is just never going to hit that level that I think they need him to. And then there's the one other part that, and I don't want to get too down on the Ravens, but the only reason I'm saying this, Greg, is because you're pretty strong. You said it on Sky today. You said it at the field, that you see them as a Super Bowl contender. I don't know if Lamar is the same guy anymore in terms of his ability to be a special playmaker. You see him kind of getting taken down on plays that maybe old Lamar a few years back is busting for touchdowns. And when we're looking,
when he got his taken down by essentially his ankle, would that have happened a couple years ago?
For that big play in the red zone on that big 3rd down or when they're near the goal line, I'm not seeing that as much from him. Again, small sample size, but it's just something to keep an eye on. Is Lamar going to be the explosive guy that turns defenses on their heads?
I think that's right, but I also think that means he's gone as a running threat from the greatest running quarterback, I believe, of all time to one of the 5 or 6 best running quarterbacks in the league. That adds a lot to their running game still. But I think that's a good point that not a lot of people have thrown out there, and I think there's something to it.
When talking about him functioning well in a new offense, watching Odell, and I think Odell is just he's not been that guy for a while now, but I think today there were a number of occurrences where he just seemed to be in his own world a little bit.
Well, the interception seemed like a bad throw, but also seemed like it was a confusion where they're not on the same page.
Is Odell he's again in a new offense? Is he? You've had enough time. He's just a veteran player, but he just seemed out of sync with Lamar.
Let's go to the Tennessee side of things here, and Tannehill, we actually were at the stadium. We're going back and forth. They're doing the sky hits. We did a in stadium on the Jumbotron hit with our colleague and friend MJ Acosta, who, by the way, helped us out with the Q&A on our live show on Thursday, and we love her. We actually, as we're making our way across the field in the catacombs of the Hot Toddy, here comes Ryan Tannehill, almost runs us over as he's getting carted off in the second half with an ankle injury that he looked very gimpy on that ankle before he got carted off. And then, so he leaves and doesn't do anything, Mark. Malik Willis comes in, and he looks very similar to the Malik Willis that was so bad at the end of last season that Tennessee went and got Josh Dobbs off the street. So you put those things together, I just don't see a future for this offense.
No, they already were a lost in space concoction. So it's now arrow down on what was already a down-aimed arrow, whatever that means. But I will say,
that's a really down arrow.
Yeah, because
describing.
There were these things. Oh, Willis, he did look good in the preseason, or better at least than he was last year.
I want to hear it.
And they basically, Josh Dobbs, who's playing well in Arizona right now for the most part, they on the fly. The whole coaching staff came to a conclusion. We can't trust Malik Willis. We're going to go get someone off the street to take us to the critical
final. And they drafted another quarterback.
And they draft someone. It's so maybe Malik Willis won the job, but I think he's going to lose it again if he's stuck in there for a while if Tannehill's out. I will say one little thing about the Tannehill. It wasn't like us and 1,000 other reporters that saw Tannehill go by. It was a weird, it's something I'll remember about this.
It was just us.
It was just the three of us. And also we had to, it was a small little hallway in this, Medusa's chamber underneath these stadiums. And it was we had to back up against the wall. And we barely made room for this cart, and you just look at it, the look on Tannehill's face. It's wow, you can see that he's so
that's
down.
That's why I didn't think you should have said, get well soon, QB1.
Right.
I should not.
He's like, I guess the Tana scale, you're underneath it now, bozo. And I was like, Mark, why would
the
you
fist
do
bump
that?
was also not, which he did not accept, was not appropriate. I understand that now, but I'm growing.
It is fun, though. We were on the sideline, and Mark and I are just saying, the basic bro comments when, on one play, Lamar ran right near us.
5 yards away from us.
On the sideline. We're just like, man, that guy's big. Man,
they're huge, though.
This is what we say every time we go to games,
I know,
by the way.
It's like, my
These guys
God,
are big.
Nick Folk is quite a man.
Nick Folk could walk into a bar and look like a giant and beat anyone up or beat everyone up.
Yeah, he's a beast. There was one. The Titans are just a tough watch, and I was watching Vrabel throughout the game. There was a moment when the Titans got back in the game, and it's a third quarter, and they have the ball in the red zone, and it's second down, and Tannehill, again, was not physically right, but he drops back and throws basically two prayers near the pylon to DeAndre Hopkins, who had one catch on 5 targets. Neither had a chance, to the point where he was interfered with on one Hopkins throw, but it was so flung out of bounds that they picked up the flag. And that was after they also, on a 4th and 1 early in the game, they settled for the field goal. And it was just like, that's when I say I don't see a future for this offense. It just feels like it needs a harsh reboot. I know Henry had one big run in this game that gave them life, Greg, on a direct snap, but he's a step slower now. And it's just like, I just don't see it happening for this team.
So he had a 63-yarder. Spears had the 48-yarder. That was about half of their offensive production. And D-Hop, it is cool to be on the field that close, to see those one-on-one matchups. And look, he's never been the guy who wins immediately in terms of his release off the line of scrimmage, but those were 2 plays where it was just like, man, he had no chance either. There was nowhere to throw the ball.
We also saw him, we're couched down in the end zone, and he walked off really holding his hand. So we'll see. I don't know. I mean, they can't afford to lose anyone else, but it almost doesn't matter with what I saw today.
Yeah, and do they have their bye coming up? The Titans.
They do. Their next week is
Tannehill. Look, the way he was moving, and he's had injuries the last few years to slow him. That looks like something where he's going to have to stay off it for a while. I'm sure he was in a boot after this game.
Man, he took Larry got. I think some people, if you were just sort of watching it casually, you'd think he absolutely got destroyed on the play. But he was hurt before that and hobbling around on the field, and it's like this is the same thing that happened to him a year ago, and they crashed down the stretch.
Yeah, they were a tough team to watch, and at times this week, this has been a tough city to be in, because when you're in London long enough, you can look up and it's a nice day. And then out of nowhere, the sky's just open, and then the rain comes down because the Ravens took care of this one big. And forget about leaving the EU. England is back in the green.
What?
Coins falling from the sky all over the UK. The Rainmakers 1-1 on the season.
I mean, he's not wrong this time. It's been an up and down journey. But
I wish he would have. He just went money line on it.
I don't care.
That's fine.
It doesn't matter.
He was prancing around all day in a beautiful Rainmaker sweatshirt. I don't know if that was made for him. Apparently not. But it was
Henry and I made sure that he would be wearing it today.
I love this.
Beautiful,
Everyone
beautiful jersey.
Check it out. It's from Idris Elba's charity. So I don't know. It's being sold
Don't
somewhere.
Stop
from the
Your Future.
If you really want to support the Rainmaker,
I mean, it should go to the people who've lost, props on your Rainmaking advice, probably, but not you.
We're doing fine. It's been a tough couple of years for the UK, but we're
culture difference. That Elba's charity, or what it is very important. It's like knife violence awareness.
There have been a lot of issues on the subways here, out in the streets,
and that's interesting. Our country deals with a different weapon that does a lot of damage. Knife awareness.
This is a separate issue,
Just
but
wondering
how
Dan's going to transition out of this one.
I've mentioned the child gangs. Be careful of those.
Let me fire us into another game, and we'll share some more England thoughts. But let's head to Cincy. There was no way out. Now, I could have done it if Greg didn't call attention to it.
Right.
Yeah, but that's what Greg does. Congratulations, Greg. And Mark, congratulations on your Lions lock.
4th and 7 from the 8. Geno Smith back to throw.
Finish.
Looking.
Yeah.
And he gets hit.
Yeah.
The ball squirts forward, and the Bengals fall on it at the 8-yard line. That is coffin nailed.
Bam! Bam!
Bam! You have Sam Hubbard and Hill. Hubbard and Hill. 2 more H-boys. You got Henderson, Hill, Hubbard, all the H-boys making plays, pressuring the quarterback.
Settle down.
The whiskey is flowing.
We must have an open bar there. Dan Horde and Dave Lapham, WCKY. Well, it's good that Greggy got his glory there with the Ravens. And you locked up the Ravens as well,
I did
right?
lock them up, yes.
Claybon, we need some locks. We need to hear that sound. That's what we live for. And Zeuser locked up this one with the West brothers as the Bengals, even though their offense, keep hitting those locks. We got to do 3 in a row.
I mean, Nick Westland will be very
That was
upset.
mine.
He
We need 4 in a row. We got to catch up.
He's on a little streak. We're going to hear about it.
One more. Nick, I mean, these texts that Westling is sending.
Talk about an open bar.
I mean, you guys are lucky that you pivoted out of that 49ers lock.
Can we get that music? Yeah. Listen, all you people on social media that think they know what a cowardly lock is. Really? I can give the Bengals their music back if you could, Mr. Kleinman, because they deserve it. Their defense does, at least, getting multiple stops on Geno Smith and the Seahawks deep in the red zone and stealing, really, a 17-13 win. Greg, I know this is frustrating for you as a Geno fan, as a Seahawks fan, because they had their chances here to take a win after their own defense did such a great job against Burrow and that offense after the first couple of drives, but they couldn't make the big play.
No, the Seahawks were inside the 15-yard line 3 separate times in this game without scoring a single point. Once had a 1st and goal at the 3, where they got backed up by a penalty and Geno threw an interception. They outgained the Bengals 381 to 214. They dominated, but I try to look at this globally, and I think the Bengals have become a winning organization, a winning team, and they've just found a way to get to their bye at 3-3 somehow. If you think about all 6 of their games, none of them have been complete. None of them. And yet they're 3-3. In Arizona, their defense was getting shredded, but their offense stepped up with a big game last week. In this one, and then the Monday night win against the Rams, the defense gave up a lot of yards, but saved them. And they just have found a way. They're healthy enough. Burrow moved in this game, even though the offense was essentially stillborn after the first quarter, and they escaped. And they made enough big plays, and Trey Hendrickson and Hubbard and all the H-boys, as they said, made it happen, and they confused the hell out of Geno Smith. I can't remember Geno Smith ever holding the ball as long as he held it today.
I'm willing to, just look beyond what happened after those first 2 really great touchdown drives. Just because, your quarterback is healthy, he looked healthy, he's moving great. You just believe that Burrow will correct these things, the offense will. But here, this were the net yards on the drives after those 2 touchdown marches: 20, 4, 15, 13, 19, 0, 12, 4, -1. I'm not saying it's concerning because it's like
it is concerning. They've been a concerning team. They're lucky to be 3-3. They could be a 2-4, 1-5 type of team.
But if we're gonna say Baltimore could be this, but they're this, the Bengals could be this, but they're this. But the Bengals have already shown that they're AFC title material, and I kind of want to trust them to get out of this groove.
Yeah, and I think that if you talk to a Bengals fan and said, listen, Burrow is going to be on one leg for most of the first 6 weeks, and you look at the schedule, I think you would take 3-3. And even though the offense, it's disappointing how they were unable to get anything going here down the stretch, including multiple times where they could have closed out Seattle and kept on opening the door, and Lou Anarumo's defense deserves a ton of credit. Still, you saw Burrow moving well in this game. He was flushed out, didn't seem to have any setbacks. So as long as he's still physically healthy, they're going to continue, I think, to figure things out. But at the same time, Greg, and you were saying it when we were in the car ride over from Hot Toddy to Sky Studios, when they score those 2 touchdowns in the first half, it's like, oh, they're back and they're just going to roll. So it's a little mystifying to see it dry up the way it did in this game.
Right. T. Higgins is having a nightmare free agent season.
Yeah.
2 catches for 20 yards, some miscommunications today. They weren't
banged up
the running game going. I also think they played a really good Seahawks team who is figuring out how to put it all together and win, and they didn't today. But, look, they're the one team that did beat Detroit, and they're starting to show signs on defense that they could be difficult to deal with. So I think it's going to be a really frustrating game because for the most part, despite the sacks and the hits, I actually think Geno was protected pretty well. He just didn't know what he was seeing, and he just held it forever, over and over and over again. It was one of those games where you don't want to be on the TV copy because you're like, what are you doing, Geno? You're just holding it forever, and maybe sometimes the receivers aren't open, but you still got to get rid of the ball. And so that's a credit to the Bengals defense. But for the most part, there's a lot of good things about this Seahawks team after 5 weeks.
You talked about him throwing with almost extreme confidence at times. Where he's firing the ball into dangerous. I think it's I kind of like that. He just simply believes.
And he had some dimes tonight.
Right,
too.
he threw a couple insane throws. I just want to play the Bengals song for 1 second. I want to tell you one thing I think about it.
Whoa.
Can we just play it for a second?
Nice.
Well, so I was listening to this. And it's I do truly believe this is a top 3 song for me in my entire life. It's just become that.
Whoa.
Because it's I think I will put this on AirPods on the flight
better than
home.
Sullivan Street by Counting Crows.
I never
where does
would
it
have
rank on the
expected to think
Sessler
that. It's
power rankings?
It is number 3 of all time. It's the number.
Does it
3
beat
song.
Enya's greatest work?
Enya's in a 1 or 2 spot. I can shuffle between 2 Enya songs.
Right.
But this is number 3, and it's I'm just gonna sit on that airplane home with a drink
got
on the
that
table and
kinda
just listen to it on repeat.
How the West was won.
It's got a little bit of that feel.
Yeah.
And I think it fits this Bengals team. They Wild West, showdowns. Everyone gets a little dirty.
Filthy sometimes.
Very filthy.
Filthy dirty. Man, we had some good times with Handsome Hank, Henry Hodgson, our buddy, one of our great buds that started here in England, did a decade or so in L.A., and now is back in England running the show for the U.K. We had conversations in the Wilton Arms, the pub near our hotel that we can never discuss on the air.
No, we can never discuss. And I think it's funny because, out on the town, and it happens only in London, but, out on the town sometimes, there a lot of people are here for the football game. They'll come up to us and want to take a photo, and then Henry's, sometimes taking the photo. It's do you realize that Henry is essentially, Europe's Roger Goodell? And probably someday has a chance to be our Roger Goodell. And, they're would you mind taking a photo of the boys?
I would love it if you would take a photo.
Henry
with us.
is tall and powerful and handsome and
well,
literally.
That's not what I thought you were going to say.
Right? No, I mean that was a pretty strong pivot away from potentially dangerous territory.
We cannot
of Dan's biological theories.
We cannot discuss the other topic on any
level. I thought
level.
what you were going to say, Mark, was that we were, fans coming up to ask for a photo, and then you realize, they were sitting at the table next to us during some of these conversations that could never be shared.
No, they would want nothing to do with us if they hadn't heard.
All right, let's stay in the NFC West and see how the Rams did against the Cardinals.
This drive upcoming. Number 9 in Royal and Soul.
It's all above the board. It's nothing.
No.
Humor.
Humor.
You're enjoying
biological.
You're liking that rugby yesterday.
Oh, I love that rugby.
Touchdown, Cooper Kupp. Touchdown, LA. 13 yards for his first touchdown this season. 9 and dime on the money on the first possession of the third quarter.
That's our boy, J.B. Long. I call him J.B. Smooth. Has that been taken?
Now it is.
Because he's so velvety on the mic. And guess what? The Rams, they just take care. It's a take care of business week against the Cardinals, who hung in the first half, as they seem to do most weeks. But the Rams pull away, and yes, it is Cooper Kupp with his first of what, if he remains healthy now, many touchdowns this season, because he is as good as ever with Matthew Stafford flinging them perfect spirals. 26-9 Rams roll, Mark.
It's Cooper Kupp and it's someone else, and I wonder if it signals a potential change for the Rams. TBD on that. But they were sat at around 65 yards in the first half until Stafford hit Kupp for a 45-yard gain that set up a field goal to put them up 9-6. That said, they were 20 minutes in the game and close to halftime too. They had 6 yards rushing, and they had been coming into this contest in 4 out of 5 of them. They were held under 100 yards, and it's just they couldn't run the ball. And it's with all that else that's going on, like on this team in general, it's like you want to see them be able to be balanced, and they couldn't, and it put them out into rough pastures at times. But then I love what happened. You come out of halftime because again, this was a game where the Cardinals, it's like they're sneaky frisky or I don't know what the term is, but they were hanging around. Josh Dobbs is doing his thing. Their defense looked really good. They're feisty for
their first half feisty.
Their first half feisty, or sometimes it's second half, but it's like definitely first half. And the Rams came out, and it's like we're gonna do the thing that we can't do, and just keep doing it till we can. And Kyren Williams, who has been up and down, came out on this opening drive to take a bigger lead, and he gashed the Cardinals for 17 yards. Next play, 6 yards. Next play, 14 yards. Next play, 10 yards. And it's like, this is how you start to break a team like the Cardinals that knows they can hang around, but then at this point, they're 1-5, starts to probably have internal suspicions when a team gets hot on them like this. Kyren Williams winds up with 158 yards and a touchdown at 7.9 yards per carry. To me, because shutting down the Cardinals' offense is never a huge story, to do this on the ground and to dominate the way they did down the stretch was a bit of a sea change. And I just wonder if teams change and if they can start to run the ball like this in big spots or on big downs or in short yardage situations, if you can trust that, this Rams team that is 3-3 is in a different place.
Well, it's amazing to even think about that they could be a team that has a take care of business game, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're supposed to be one of the worst teams in the league. And they were trailing at halftime. And they won the second half 20-0. And you think about their 2 wins, Colts and the Cardinals, their last 2 wins. They ran the ball very physically in both of these games. It's the type of team that they want to be a closing team that wears you down. You don't think of the Rams that way, but they can do that because they have Stafford and Kupp. Like that's the thing that makes it happen. And out of the 10 best throws I saw today, I feel like 4 or 5 were Stafford. It's just like he's love
doing it every week.
Watching this dude play, and you can't really separate Kupp from Stafford, but that doesn't matter. Like, it's a wide receiver league, and you just can't tell me there's any wide receiver particularly better than Cooper Kupp. I mean, Justin Jefferson is who he is, and if I'm like starting a team, I guess I would take him first, but you can't. He's not at another level. No one is a level above where Cooper Kupp is. 15 for 266 in his first 2 games back.
Wow. Yeah, and I guess the only thing that would stop you is that he's a little bit sneaky old. He's 30. You kind of expect
right
him
now
to be 27,
but when he's on the field and healthy, yeah.
And he had a knee injury that cost him a season, but like his ability to get open and just really master seems like every element of the game. And again, I think he was a 3rd-round pick back in the day. 69th overall in 2017. He's a brilliant player. And yeah, I know Matthew Stafford's probably not going to the Hall of Fame, but he is, to me, one of the greatest throwers of the football that I have ever seen. He is right there with Aaron Rodgers, who many times gets that crown in terms of modern players. Just such a beautiful ball. And he throws some of those things, Greg, where it's like you need kind of a cannon to make some of the throws he makes, but he puts them right on the money with no margin for error, and he does it quite often. You protect him and keep him healthy. This is a playoff team.
That one to Tutu Atwell was like, hello.
Right. Like that was Tutu's only catch, and now Puka Nacua is going to be less of the offense. He had 26 yards today, and Tutu only had that one catch. Like, it's fine. They don't need to be superstars, but he's making their production with these throws. If they're just a fun team. I mean, they're a fun team to watch. They're giving the Rams fans some enjoyment. I'm going to lock them up. Oh, no way.
Nice job.
Are you going to nominate them?
Give them a lock sound.
Ooh, wow. The Rams for Team of 8.
I don't know if the audience would be down with that, but I think that they are certainly fun to watch, and they are, to me, like one of the biggest surprises, definitely in the NFC West and in general in the NFC, because they are, and a credit to Sean McVay.
One little other, I feel like, I don't know if we mentioned his name in ages, but like Raheem Morris, who leads a defense that, in August for Aaron Donald has no one else around him. He's done I'm always monitoring this assistant coach of the year thing. Jim Schwartz is up there, but like Raheem Morris.
You're monitoring who could dare come up against your beloved Jim Schwartz. That's what this is about.
But Jim
also had,
Schwartz wasn't my pick a couple weeks ago. But
the Rams probably also have like the 25th best defense. Also, shout out to Veronica, Sean McVay's wife, for holding that baby in just one more day so he could coach that win. A veteran move by her.
I'm sure she's listening.
You can control that.
Houston
all right, last game before we
it's
have
4th and 10 at the Houston 24. Carr in the gun, leg down. Here's the snap.
Big
Good
ups to
pressure.
Veronica.
Carr throwing left
Can you
field.
control when it
Left side of the field, downfield.
Himika did it.
And
She
it's
held it through,
intercepted, but
threw it
out of
around.
bounds. They're going to call it incomplete.
That's
And the Saints turn it over on downs. Houston has the rock. 15 seconds to go. They
You
can
think
kill
she's
the
okay with
clock.
you sharing that very private moment?
That's public. That's public news.
All right, there it is. Well, why do you guys talk over the highlights? Shut up. Mark Vandermeer with the call. KILT. Texans. Man, the Texans. What a fun start to the season. They are 3-3, but they are a feisty, frisky. No. Forget feisty. A frisky 3-3, 20-13 win over the New Orleans Saints at home. C.J. Stroud once again making big boy throws in his rookie season. He throws for nearly 200 yards, 2 scores, and they get some good stops on defense. A game here, boys, where Derek Carr, box scores can lie. He threw for 353 yards in that game, but they only produced, like I said, 13 points, and they only allowed 3 points in the second half, the Houston defense. So DeMeco Ryans is starting to figure some things out on this side of things. And you have what's wrong, Mark?
I'll ask you a question in a minute.
Go ahead.
Well, you're talking about the 13 points. Like,
yes.
You get to Houston's 34 missed field goal. You get to Houston's 11 missed field goal, and then your final drive, you get to Houston's 24, and you have an interception. How frustrating can that be for Saints fans?
Yeah,
throwing furniture around the room.
They consistently move the ball, but then when it was time to do the business of scoring, they failed to the point they had 430 yards in this game to just 297 for the Texans, and yet they did not have that ability to punch it in and take this game. So credit Houston's defense is starting to figure some things out.
I would be concerned for the Saints, but I'm so excited about this Texans team.
They've matched their win total from last year.
That's
for real.
That's
incredible.
incredible.
October 16th,
and they're at least, hopefully, because I'm liking this team, gonna keep Jacksonville honest in a division that the Jaguars could threaten to pull away with. The Titans don't look too good. We heard some bad news about Richardson. Patrick and Shook will get to those games later, but this Texans team is young. They have the makeup to get better as the season goes along because they're so young.
Yes.
What else about this game?
Well, the Saints have lost for the third time in 4 games after opening the season at 2-0, and yeah, I think it's a game about missed opportunities for this offense, and I think if you're someone who's there's a couple things with this offense that Derek Carr he's very similar to the Raiders' Derek Carr, where he's going to give you a very professional effort, but he's not maybe a playmaker or quarterback that you need. Alvin Kamara, since he came back from the suspension, he is very, very active within this offense. They give him the ball a ton.
26 touches today.
But the difference between Alvin Kamara of this year and a couple of years back is he doesn't ever kind of get that crease and have that big play. He'll go get you 7 yards now, but that 7 yards used to be 20 yards a couple of years back. So that's an issue. And, yeah, Chris Olave, they find a way to get him the ball. If you want to look for positives, one of the things that have been frustrating, I think, for Saints fans is Olave not being the focal point of the passing game. He led the team in targets, had nearly 100 yards. But ultimately, when they needed to make the big play, Olave, Michael Thomas kept out of the end zone, as was Alvin Kamara.
I like it when just record justice happens. The Saints should not be a 4-2 team. They deserve to be knocked down to 3-3. The Texans, they've been an enjoyable team. They deserve to get up to 3-3. So it's just this was justice.
Like in the boring offense rankings, the Patriots are beyond. I'm not sure if boring were the worst possible thing you could say. They're the number 1 team, but where are the Saints? It just feels like a.
That sounds like a Wednesday show conversation.
Okay.
Well, especially because they're playing on Thursday Night Football.
Oh, perfect. Look, you've done our work for us.
Saints Jags.
I mean, we have to watch this game though on tape, and I'll watch the Texans.
I will watch it on the plane.
Interesting.
Okay, now let's take care of some housekeeping before we hand off to Claybon and Shook. First of all, rugby, shout out. Into rugby now. Was completely unaware of its existence almost. I knew that it was a thing. Actually watched it with Henry at a bar in Notting Hill. Watched a great Wales-Argentina match. Argentina, good job. Ireland gets taken out by New Zealand. That one hurt, but it was actually another fun match. Big thanks. So, yeah, rugby. Did you guys discover any sports out here?
I mean,
You were into it as well.
I watched the Ireland game. I was learning about the strategy. I'm into it now, too. Like, watching the hits today on the field from up close was crazy, but suddenly they didn't seem quite as vicious after watching rugby.
I don't know how half
God.
those rugby guys survive one game. I gotta say, Claybon, yes?
I was going to say England versus South Africa now in the semis coming up.
Oh, look at that.
You gotta stick around and watch the.
Right,
I don't know what time they're on.
I watched that game, and I would like to declare the entire New Zealand team is now in the concussion protocol, just by my eyes.
and yes, Ireland for me is my team of rugby TL. And I hope they'll be back next year, and Sexton and company have one more crack at it. Big thanks to everybody here at Sky. It could not have run smoother. Everyone that we worked with, including Phoebe, who was a pleasure.
Absolutely.
We got to get her on the show.
Yes. And also, of course, Neil Reynolds, our buddy. We met Ndamukong Suh, who introduced himself as Sue. He just said, "Hi, I'm Sue." That was interesting to me.
I think we formed. I mean, there was a friendship that formed there. Until maybe we began to do our on-field hits, and by the end of the game, you might have thought,
it's like, oh my God, these guys.
Aspects
Mark
of these guys
immediately mentioned the column that he's brought up about 78 times on this show that he wrote about moms of the NFL.
I interviewed Ndamukong Suh's mom, who went on a long, delightful tangent about Ndamukong Suh at a young age being sort of a genius with Legos, and I thought
really nice conversation, icebreaker they call that.
Yes.
So
then
thanks to
I continued
everybody.
to talk to him 4 or 5 more times, and then the attraction level on his site just started to dip.
Thanks to Zyka, that Indian restaurant in London. That was the wonderful dinner we had last night. Second year in a row we've gone to Zyka and killed it. Go if you're in London and you want to have.
Was it free?
10 out of 10. It was not free.
Not free.
But
they should thank you too. You're helping them.
And anyone that makes me that happy, they deserve it.
Yeah, and thank you to everyone back at the NFL office who helped make this happen. Matt Schneider, Meredith, Batten, like all the people that support our show behind the scenes and get us here because it takes work. And, of course, Henry Hodgson, who's done amazing work supporting us through the years, including, once again, this year. Anything else?
I mean, stepping right into with the live show right here on the 1s and 2s. We got DJ Jason Kleinman.
Hey,
been a huge.
Get a DJ Horn in there in the post.
He was like Trial by Fire.
Yeah.
DJAF.
Killed it.
He killed it. But no, it's all like this is all these trips. You just feel very grateful for where we're at, and grateful that we got guys like Shook and Claybon to take the rest of this show home, so we don't have to blather on anymore. It's 2 a.m. and we've talked for an hour.
And just with Kleinman, not only did he do a great job of producing and helping us out today, of course, what has been a 16-hour day. We threw him into the boiler of a live show.
Yep, nailed it.
And he really stepped up for us there too. So Jason, thank you, buddy.
And Eric back on the home front.
I was gonna say big shout out to Eric. A lot of help back there.
Randy
and the team. So
you can celebrate by enjoying like half a day off, and then another podcast tomorrow, and then another podcast on Wednesday and then Thursday.
All right. Without further ado, we have some more games to get to, but we are going to sign off here as we are past 2 a.m. here in London. Can't wait to be back next year. But now we throw it to Patrick Claybon to take us home. Claybon, momentum is real.
And a big American hello to you guys. Appreciate that. To the guys in London. We'll allow them to take a break. Patrick Claybon here in the Chris Wessling podcast studio. Joined digitally by Nick Shook. Nick, we got it. We'll give the boys a break, and we'll finish up week 6 for them. Why not?
This is the magic of the internet. We can do this from multiple different time zones right now. You know, from the West Coast to the North Coast to whatever they call around London. We're doing it all.
Everything. If the people in London are listening, we got a dude from Northeast Ohio and a dude from Central Alabama ready to finish up this podcast. So let's get things going. It's time for the Sunday Drive presented by the first ever Toyota Grand Highlander. After a slow start, it was the Fins to the finish in Miami.
3rd down and goal from the 1. Mostert in the backfield. They give it to Mostert. Touchdown, his 3rd of the afternoon.
Boy, Raheem Mostert just does it again. It's getting chippy out there now, too. A lot of pushing and shoving. What a game for Raheem Mostert.
And the Dolphins have now scored 34 consecutive points.
Jeez.
They were down 14-0 at the end of the first quarter. It's now 34-14 over the Panthers.
Jimmy Cefalo and Joe Rose, the WBGG, telling the story there at Carolina Panthers team. They said it 14-0 shook, but then the Miami Dolphins happened. Raheem Mostert had 3 touchdowns. Tua Tagovailoa had 3 touchdowns. Mostert had 115 yards on the ground. You start fast against Miami, it doesn't matter. They're the Dolphins.
No, it doesn't matter at all. This is a team that I think maybe needed a slow first quarter to serve as their smelling salts, because once they woke up, they were off to the races. It's as if somebody just knocked them right in the jaw and said, hey, you have a football game to play. And they were like, oh, you're right. We are the Miami Dolphins. We do have Tyreek Hill. We do have Tua Tagovailoa and Raheem Mostert. Even if we don't have Devon A-Chain, we'll be just fine. And they were just fine. Got off to the races. Had a phenomenal second and third quarter. Just put up a ton of points on the board. Everything seemed easy for them offensively. They figured it out defensively. Bryce Young looked solid in the first quarter. He had 2 of his best drives of his young career. And then after that, only went back to being the Panthers and didn't score again offensively for the rest of the game. Miami is, they're almost a team that's just inevitable at this point. They're a team that's going to put points on the board. They've only really struggled offensively once, and that was in a win over the Patriots on Sunday Night Football. Since then, they've just been a machine, and they were a machine once again on Sunday.
They did it without their new speedy addition, Devon A-Chain, who's had a spectacular start to his career. Raheem Mostert taking the lion's share of the carries, getting the most out of those. And then you come into the fact you get Jalen Waddle doing the waddle. The owners up in the booth waddling as well. Tyreek Hill is doing a celebration that inevitably, and for those of you who didn't see, he scores that touchdown, grabs somebody who was already recording. This was previously discussed, clearly, because he's recording as Tyreek Hill scores. He takes the phone from the person who's recording, does a backflip while looking at the phone, and gives it back to him. I'm sure we'll use that in promotions while Tyreek is being fined. Either way, he says he doesn't care about the money. They're a point machine. They're just an absolute point factory in South Florida.
I think Mike McDaniel said after the game, I was told that it was a prop, and I told him, and he said, well, it wasn't my phone, so I don't see the problem with it. The other thing I have about this phone video, by the way, is I saw Joe Shad had tweeted it, and it ended right when he grabbed the phone and looked down. I don't know if it was trimmed on purpose or if it really did just end there. If so, big missed opportunity on a highlight play. But yeah, I mean, Tyreek Hill's so much fun to watch this team. We speak hyperbolically about a lot of players pretty often because this is a league full of elite talent, but he is just one of a kind in the way that his catch and run ability can completely change a game and just give an entire defense nightmares. I mean, he ran a deep in. I think it would have been for a gain of like 20 yards. He reversed course at midfield on the logo and picked up another 27 yards going down the right sideline. Nobody could catch him. He had to run out of bounds. It's just, he's a phenomenal player and really keeps this offense going. Oh, and by the way, speaking of celebrations, they did a Remember the Titans celebration. Yeah. I don't know if you remember that scene where they walked in, they do the, they did that one too. They're very creative there.
They're going to run out of movies at a certain point. They're scoring so much, this Dolphins team. Fun to watch them celebrate in the end zone. They get the win 42-21 over those Carolina Panthers, as you said.
Miami.
Yes. Bienvenido, Miami. They get that win. That was the Sunday Drive presented by Toyota. Let's go places. Learn more at toyota.com/Grand Highlander. So we'll get a chance to see Tyreek Hill in a revenge game in Frankfurt, Germany against the Kansas City Chiefs. There were so many revenge game dynamics going on in Las Vegas today. Josh McDaniels, the former three times over Padawan, taking on Bill Belichick, the Jedi Master, in Las Vegas.
How about we finish this off with a safety, shall we? Anything but a deep ball.
4 down territory, obviously. Jones standing in his own end zone to our right. Snap, back to pass. Pressure again off the edge. And he's sacked for the safety. Crosby and Nichols, they met in the end zone. They squished into the turf, and the Raiders defense has that safety.
Jason, since you predicted it, how about you give me the lottery numbers for next week?
That's Lincoln Kennedy asking Jason Horowitz of KRLV what happened there and what's going to happen as he predicted the safety. Max Crosby gets to Mac Jones, and this Patriots team falls yet again, Shook. They lose to the Raiders in Las Vegas. Just a brutal performance by an offense, 21-17. They did finally get back in the red zone, but they couldn't do a lot out of it.
Yeah, first off, I know this is kind of out of my realm of power and influence, but I'm just going to suggest this right now to you, producer Eric. Put that in the file folder for best calls of the year. I mean, how often do you get a lottery numbers call? That's got to be there. Because this was fantastic. A great way to end this game in an otherwise kind of an ugly game, Patrick, to be honest with you. The Patriots got a little bit better offensively. A little bit better. Still not very good. They did get to the red zone, like you said, finally. But everything is so tough for this team. Not to start with the losers in this show and in this game recap, but I mean, they needed 17 plays in 9.5 minutes to score a touchdown to make it a one-possession game in the fourth quarter. They didn't leave themselves much time. Then Mac Jones throws his best pass of 2023, and Devontae Parker drops it near midfield. I mean, that's just where these Patriots are offensively right now. It's tough to watch. Meanwhile, on the Raiders side, pretty good team win, I think. Nothing super spectacular. You lose Jimmy Garoppolo before halftime to a back injury. Brian Hoyer steps in, gets you into the red zone a few times, can't finish the job because he's still remembered, he's Brian Hoyer and doesn't know how to throw it to Devontae Adams where he can actually go up and make a play on the ball. But it was a strong performance, I think, as a team. Just the Raiders are a team that too often have melted down and lost games like this. Last year, they did it a lot. And it was really refreshing to see them close this one out with, all three phases of the game.
Yeah, and again, you said you hate to start with the losing team, but truly it feels as though this was another Patriots loss. Mac Jones rolling to his right is looking for Hunter Henry, who's open, got his hands up. He tries to throw on the run. He throws it 7 or 8 yards behind Hunter Henry, and Trayvon Merrick picks that ball off, takes it back down the sideline. There were so many missed opportunities. You mentioned Devontae Parker. This was a team that had gone 27 consecutive drives without making an appearance into the red zone. They finally do, and it's kind of more of the same. And they have to play so well. They have to execute so well to make things work. And when they don't do that, it just looks bad. There's not really an idea. I actually picked them to win this game. And considering the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo leaves, you mentioned he has to go to the hospital. They're checking on his back. Brian Hoyer comes in and ices a win. I just don't know where to go with this New England Patriots team.
Well, I mean, on the Raiders side, continuity really helped them out with the whole Hoyer coming in. His second pass of the game was like a 47-yard completion down the middle of the field. You were like, all right, this guy's done this before. But you're right. Where do you go with this Patriots group? Because you're right. They have to play almost perfectly to get anything done. You thought in this offseason that, all right, we bring Bill O'Brien in, and that fixes the whole offensive coordinator conundrum, whether or not they had titles, who was actually calling the plays last year. That's done. They should be better. Mac Jones still has potential, and he just hasn't. I blame a lot of it on the offensive line. It's been a revolving cast of characters so far. They can't get any continuity up there. Max Crosby getting that safety was a product of him feasting on the left tackle, Vadarian Lowe, for most of the afternoon, and especially in that big moment there. They need consistency. You know me. I'm somebody who will live and die by it starts in the trenches, and they are losing that battle every week on the offensive line, and you can't really do anything if your offensive line isn't good enough to win.
Yeah, and we've seen some moving parts. They made some acquisitions. J.C. Jackson was out there on the field today covering Devontae Adams. There's just only so many things that you can do, especially defensively, when the offense is as inept as it was. And Max Crosby making that play. Max Crosby makes a lot of offensive lines look bad. And I'll hop on the soapbox here real quick because I'm on this flagship program, Nick. Max Crosby gets credited for his motor a lot, and he does try hard. He does play a lot of plays. He's an exceptionally gifted athlete.
Yes.
He's not just out there trying
not just
hard.
to try hard, yeah.
His comparables athletically leading up to the draft was Javon Curse. We literally called him the freak. It's out of it. Stop it.
You know what this is?
What is it?
This is a product of anti-Mac bias. As a Mid-American Conference guy myself, this is anti-Mac bias. He came from Eastern Michigan. Everybody overlooked him, and now you just got to say he's a tryhard. No, I saw him destroy Mike Gesicki on, I think it was that last sack or maybe one other play obliterate him as he tried to get a chip, and then he just raced around the end. I mean, like to the point where Gesicki turned around and was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I just got hit like that." The guy is a unit. You ever stood next to him? He's massive. Yeah. I'm not a small person. He's massive. He makes me look tiny. Okay.
Yeah.
Jackpot, baby.
Yes, absolutely. Jackpot. And maybe Brent would be one of those people that would say he's just out there trying hard. He's not. The man is chiseled out of granite. He's like a freaking Asgardian. So that is a win by the Raiders. They get back on the board in the win column against, well, a whole lot of Raiders playing against their former team. Jacoby Myers also had a touchdown against the Patriots. More revenge themes here in Week 6, as Gardner Minshew's revenge game really wasn't.
Ninth play of the drive here from the 10-yard line of the Colts. You already lead this thing 24-6. Two left, two right. Bigsby, the running back, stands to the left of Trevor Lawrence against the four-man front for the Colts. Dropping is Trevor. Looking, still looking. Fires the right side. Wide open is Brenton Strange into the end zone for a touchdown.
So that is the call. Lawrence to Strange, Frank Frangie, and Jeff Lageman of WOKV as the Jags win it in Duval, 37-20. He had that touchdown from the Jags. Trevor Lawrence, another solid performance. Travis Etienne gets in the end zone. On the other side, it was 55 attempts for Gardner Minshew, and it led to more Jags pressure. This Jags defense kind of surprising everybody, playing really well the past few weeks.
If you take a look back to the second half of last season when the Jags officially started their turnaround, a lot of it was actually keyed by their defense, getting big time plays, intercepting opposing quarterbacks. They did it to Dak Prescott. They did it to Lamar Jackson and a couple of comeback wins down that stretch. This is how they played again on Sunday. This is the Jags defense I've been waiting to see, and whether it was still there. You know, a year ago, people didn't really like their secondary. Then by the end of the year, they were like, oh, it's pretty good. They played, again, like it today, very much so. Rayshon Jenkins gets a pick. Darius Williams gets a pick. There was a total of 3 interceptions on the defensive side of the ball and a recovered fumble. The other one being Andre Sisco was the third person to get a pick. Josh Allen forces a fumble. Gardner Minshew had a no good, very bad, awful, nightmares day in the city he used to call home. He was bad, just flat out bad. He threw 55 passes because they were buried in a 25-point deficit at one point. The only concern on the Jaguars side for me is the fact that they're not quite finishing drives like you want them to. You can't be perfect, of course, but for all the takeaways they had, they could have, got another trip or two into the end zone. It didn't really end up mattering. It got a little hairy in the fourth quarter when the Colts cut it to 11, but again, you're playing against Gardner Minshew, who has done enough to give the Colts a chance to win in previous appearances this year. Did not do that. Did the opposite of that. Very much lost them this game. Does not help when you cannot run the ball at all. They were a very one-dimensional team. They were talking about it repeatedly on the broadcast because it was just kind of sad to see that, well, we know they have to throw, not just because of the deficit, but because they can't run the ball anyway. It makes me, if you're trying to do not like a post-mortem, but just like a almost mid-season examination of where the Colts are right now, I've been very impressed by their play, but so much of it has relied on Anthony Richardson. And without him in there, they are just so less potent as an offense. They just cannot do the same things. Shane Steichen, to his credit, is doing his best. I think he's doing a really good job of scheming things up. It's just that you are limited by a guy who was not a starter for a reason.
Yeah, and it's even worse, right, when you look in and you kind of anoint this with the news of the fact that it may be even longer for Anthony Richardson, could be up to the end of the season before this phenomenal rookie quarterback who was playing so well, part of an exciting offense. I mean, he's doing 360 touchdown spikes. Everything is going spectacularly. And you can't, because I know there's that ability is availability conversation. So he falls on his head, right? Everybody's got a brain. It's not, a brain injury is, Tua hasn't had one this year. He had so many last year, right? And then there's the fact that the shoulder is separated. Again, it's force, mass, acceleration. Like, you can protect yourself, but it's so many of these things are just plain dumb luck. Like, we saw Trent Williams almost get taken out on a guy sliding into him. Injuries can be luck related, and it's, you say luck related, and we're thinking about a quarterback's shoulder. But hopefully, Anthony Richardson.
That was well done.
Back. Yeah, I hate it though, because Andrew. I wish Andrew was still playing. I hope Anthony Richardson is able to come back. Michael Pittman Jr. got 14 targets in this game. That's how he goes over 100 yards. Because as you mentioned, Nick, they were just throwing the ball a whole lot,
chucking it,
and not really getting a lot out of it. And so the Jags get another win there. And speaking of backup quarterbacks, 2 1-4 teams went at it in Chicago. One actually left with their starting quarterback intact.
play action out of the shotgun. Harrison Phillips trying to give him his first sack. Josh Metellus forced a fumble. It's bouncing about, picked up by Jordan Hicks. 40, 30, and is loose. Touchdown! Jordan Hicks with the second touchdown of his career has run the Minnesota Vikings to an 18-6 lead.
That was Jordan Hicks going to the end zone, told to you by the Paul Allen of KFAN. His scoop and score, ultimately the difference. The Vikings win it 19-13. Tyson Bagent, the undrafted free agent rookie, comes in after Justin Fields leaves the game. They say it's a dislocated thumb on his throwing hand. X-rays are negative, but they got to get into the magnetic resonance machine to do some imaging there to see how bad that injury could be. But it's a game, Nick, that we thought was going to have so many points where defenses have struggled. It's a final score 19-13.
Yeah, the Vikings are a better team than their record indicates. I'm not saying they're a great team. I'm not saying that they're the team that went 13-4 last year and wasn't as good as their record stated. But there's been some moments where I've looked at this roster and seen them play and just thought, man, they should be winning another game or two. I mean, obviously it starts with Kirk Cousins, who has played better than the record has indicated. But I think about guys like Josh Metellus. He's had a great year, in my opinion. Every time I watch them play, I'm like, oh, there he is making another play. There's still enough playmakers on that side of the ball that they should be a little bit better than they were, and they were today. Losing Justin Fields, obviously, kind of sinks the potential of this game, but he wasn't really finding any success before he went out either. It was a very frustrating first half for the Bears before he got hurt. Again, this is a team that came in with like one healthy running back, okay? Everybody on their depth chart, 1 through 3 was hurt, Khalil Herbert on IR, a number of other guys also, Roshan Johnson not available. You just keep going down the list. Till you get down to who had to be Deontay Foreman. It was a kind of a mash unit of a game. We're going to play backups. We're going to put things together and see how it goes. You just didn't think it was going to affect their best player on offense, which is their quarterback. Kind of a disappointing outcome for them just because you felt like they were putting it together in the last 2 weeks. Did they only get one win to show for it? Yeah. And you felt like against a team like Minnesota, they should play better than they did. But this is a weird league. And sometimes you get outcomes like this where you sit back and you think, how did that game end 19-13? How did Kirk Cousins only throw for 181 yards? They scored 19 points, and Alexander Madison was their leading rusher with 18 attempts for 44 yards. Like, what's going on here? No Justin Jefferson, by the way. That takes away a lot of the power on their offense too. So credit to the Vikings. Good win for you. Fun fact, though, today, I bet you we wouldn't have guessed this. This was not on our bingo card entering the season. Tyson Bagent and PJ Walker, who were both on the Bears preseason roster, both played in a game today. Think about that.
It's a quarterback factory in Chicago. As Nate Peterman leaves the team, he's ultimately gonna be back. We're gonna have to wait and see just how lengthy this injury to Justin Fields is. Again, the thumb on your throwing hand. Definitely going to be crucial. It's the only thing that separates us from primates is having that opposable thumb. And so it's going to be tough. And I don't even know if that's ultimately true. It's been a long Sunday. Who knows?
You're better than me. I didn't do well in science.
The Vikings, maybe Bears. Yeah, separates us from Bears, not the primates. The primates got all the digits. They do all the work. Yeah. The Vikings get that win. They are now 2-4 on the season. As we leave there and get to our next matchup, the Washington Commanders taking a trip to Atlanta.
31 seconds to go, fourth quarter here, 24-16, third and one play for the Falcons. They just burned their final timeout. They're at the 34. Empty backfield for Ritter. Gets the snap, Washington brings four. Steps up, throws. Oh, it's picked off by Jamin Davis! Unbelievable! Jamin Davis jumped around. Third pick of the half, and Washington is going to win in Atlanta.
Okay, so those of you who did not see the game, this was the Arthur Smith reaction absolute festival. 3 second-half turnovers, interceptions by Desmond Ritter. That was called by Bram Weinstein and London Fletcher on WBIG as the Commanders get a 24-16 win. It's 24-16, Nick. The Falcons are on the Commanders' side of the field. They turn the ball over 3 consecutive times, one right before the 2-minute warning, once right there, where it's the rookie phenom, Bijan Robinson, matched up against Jamin Davis. He doesn't flatten to the line of scrimmage. He lets the linebacker cut underneath him. Turnover fest towards the end as the Falcons fall at home.
There's a couple ways you can look at this, because you could say, well, Desmond Ritter, back to how he was in London, had one good game in between. Or you could say that Washington's defense figured it out again. Jamin Davis, what was his comp coming out of college? Shaq Leonard. Who did he play like on that play there? Shaq Leonard. Shout out to Daniel Jeremiah for that comp. That was his guy way back during that draft process. But the thing is the Falcons did not play well at home for, I think, the first time this year. Desmond Ridder did not play well at home for the first time this year. 3 picks. It's about as up and down as it gets. The one thing you could bank on was when he was at home, he usually played better than he did on the road. And then, of course, we find out that that's no longer the case. It's no longer the rule with this team. It's an interesting kind of examination of this game. If you look back at this and think, well, they were up 24-10, early third, they're up 24-16 fourth, and then nobody on either side scores. Yet Sam Howell had 3 touchdown passes on the day. What happened here? Well, these are two teams that I think are similarly mystifying because, Patrick, the Falcons probably shouldn't be as good as 3-3 indicates, and the Commanders could probably be a win better than their record indicates right now. It felt like 2 similar teams, but in very much different respects. Doing QB index all year, I have had Sam Howell way ahead of Desmond Ridder. I've wanted to move Ridder up, but every time I think he's about to take that step, he takes 2 steps back. So the quarterback comparison is not even, but just kind of 2 teams that we're still trying to figure out who they are. Ron Rivera, defensive mastermind, right, of the past. They gave up a ton of points to the Bears, like 2 weeks ago. There's just no consistency from either team right now. So it's perfect that this is how it ended.
It's so confusing because I have to pick these games every single week, and we come in and it's like, what do I do with the Atlanta Falcons? Well, yeah. If you told me coming into this game, hey Patrick, considering the way Desmond Ridder threw the ball 37 times, they get that win against the Houston Texans, and it's like, okay, it'll take 3 Desmond Ridder interceptions on 3 consecutive second half drives on the Commanders side of the field. I'd be like, oh, okay, he's not going to play like that again. No, he did. And that's what's so confusing. Kyle Pitts scores. Drake London's getting 9 catches at 125 yards. And it's like, yeah, Falcons, but they still find a way to lose. It's very confusing. Brian Robinson gets 31 yards on the ground. He has a touchdown catch from Sam Howell where, he shows that he can be a powerful, explosive runner. It kind of seems like the Antonio Gibson days are over. He only got 3 carries.
It seemed like that for a year, though.
For a long
we'll
time.
see.
But anybody who was holding out that last hope, right? Like me with Jalen Reagor, it's finally over. And we're going to continue to be confused by these teams until things keep going. And we've had one team that has not had the success in prime time. So let's go to Orchard Park for some Sunday night football, Giants and Bills.
Be poetic justice if they scored in this end zone. Untimed play. Giants down 5. First and goal at the 1. Taylor over center. Takes the snap, back, lobs it back in the end zone, off the hands of Waller, incomplete.
And that is how the ball game ended in New York, in upstate New York. The Bills survive, and producer Eric can let out a sigh of relief as his Buffalo Bills hold off Tyrod Taylor and the New York Giants at the goal line. Final score 14-9. In a game where Saquon Barkley finally got going in the second half, 3.9 yards per carry. But ultimately, Nick Shook, Josh Allen had an opportunity to make the play, and he made the play to a man who has not been targeted all season on an absolute laser beam to Quentin Morris.
We talked about anti-Mac bias earlier in the show. Well, here's another Mac standout from Bowling Green. Quentin Morris makes the biggest catch of the game in the tightest window possible. Josh Allen getting outside of the pocket, getting busy with it, getting a little bit adventurous, if you will, outside of the pocket, extending plays as he did for much of the second half. And that time, from the side angle, it looked like he was throwing a pick. And then we saw the sky cam, the end zone angle, and realized, no, it was just a very narrow window. It capped off a couple of long drives for the Bills. We talked earlier in the show about how things were difficult for the Patriots. Everything was hard for them offensively. Everything was hard for the Bills offensively on Sunday night, including their touchdown drives. But methodical was the way to go for them because it's what produced points for them and allowed them to take the lead in a game that we thought we'd probably see a lot of points out of the Bills, and we just didn't. Josh Allen didn't look like himself in the first half, but luckily for them, they figured it out. They found it, and they were able to hang on for a narrow victory over a team that probably most everybody thought they would blow out.
Yeah, and huge credit and kudos goes to Wink Martindale's squad. The defense really gave Buffalo all kinds of problems throughout the game. The lingering memory that so many people are going to have is the last 40 seconds of the first half, where Buffalo they get a stop, there's a first down, and then inexplicably, like 12 seconds run off the clock before Brian Daboll calls what would be the final timeout.
Yeah,
and then they get down to the 1 yard line, and Tyrod checks to a run play. They don't have enough time to get the ball snapped after Saquon gets tackled at the 1. Brian Daboll is livid, so livid, in fact, he can't do the post-halftime interview. He's still too mad. Ultimately, the points, they would have won the field goals, but you can't retroactively apply it. It's going to be a different game. There's different scenarios. But just a crucial time management mistake at the end of the first half that they almost got a chance to erase at the end, but no play.
Yeah, I mean, Giants fans are going to be in my mention about this for the whole week, about how, well, if they would have put 3 on the board, they would have put 3 on the board here, and they would have done this and that, they would have won the game. The same could go for the Bills. Tyler Bass missed 2 field goals after coming in perfect on the year. So, it goes both ways. And I was actually, you could look at the whole goal line situation in one of 2 ways, I think, because you mentioned it. He let a lot of time run off before calling that last timeout. It's almost like he was waiting for it to land at a perfect 30 seconds left on the clock, which I found strange in that moment, and then came back to bite them on the goal line. Because if you're going to call 2 plays, you're going to have the ability to check to a run. You got to do it with enough time. Otherwise, you don't make that a possibility. And yet they did. Tyrod did it, and then, of course, his coach is mad at him because it didn't work. If it does work, then they're praising him. So, that's the perils of playing quarterback in the NFL, I suppose, in that situation. But it would have been fitting. You're right. It would have been fitting if they would have scored in that exact same situation there. An untimed down to end the game. Could have been PI on Taron Johnson. Wasn't, but could have been PI. Got PI the play before. That was very clearly PI on Terrell Bernard. But you're not going to get that flag twice, I think, in that scenario. They're going to, keep those in their pockets. So good on the officials, I guess, there. A thrilling game that we didn't think would be thrilling. Kind of an ugly game. But again, fun games don't always have to be the prettiest.
Yeah, and ultimately, the lingering memory besides the goal line, and you have to wonder, if Brian Daboll had not lost his mind after that play, if Tyrod comes into that final play feeling a little more empowered to change things, then maybe he could have gotten into a different situation. Either way, Taron Johnson had an entire fistful of Darren Waller's jersey. It was very clear on the replay, but no flag, no call. The Giants lose yet again. On primetime. We get a little bit of a primetime reprieve from the Giants, but a feisty performance from them nonetheless.
Yeah, and I think this is going to it's going to open an interesting can of worms, I think, regarding the Giants. And this, of course, is directly tied to whether Daniel Jones can play in the next week. But because of the way they looked on offense tonight, now granted, they only put 9 points on the board, but you have to admit they looked better on offense in this game than they have in the last 3 weeks. And that is undoubtedly going to come back to the quarterback. There are some people who are going to say Tyrod's your better option. That's obviously not going to be what they do because Daniel Jones is making $40 million a year, but it is an interesting comparison. It's not apples to apples necessarily, but it is an interesting way to look at it and think, is Daniel Jones really capable of doing it with this team? Now, were some changes in important factors around him, right? Justin Pugh comes from, as you said, straight off the couch in the intros to Sunday Night Football, comes in and plays really well in the offensive line and kind of helped them shore things up a little bit. As you said, they were able to get the running game going in the second half. It was funny. They showed a stat. I think Saquon Barkley had 18 carries for 32 yards at one point, ended up tripling that total by the time the night was over. I have to go back to Brian Daboll and the way that he kind of operated, this offense in key moments, because they were gashing them on the ground late in the game. And then all of a sudden, when they're on the doorstep of the end zone once again, he goes for 3 straight passes and they end up settling for a field goal. That touchdown could be a difference in such a tight game. I think they're going to look back on this, and number one, they're going to look at that last sequence right before half and want to change that. But there's some other areas where they're going to look back and say, I wish I would have coached better here. I wish we would have done better here, because there were some opportunities left out on the field. And they're 1-5 now. I hate to say it because I don't think they're a very good team, but I do think that they're better than 1-5, and it's kind of a bummer for them.
Yeah, a struggle for them. Up next for the Buffalo Bills, they visit the New England Patriots. And as for the Giants, a little reprieve, a little time off to think about what all went wrong, and maybe Brian Daboll can calm down, have some herbal tea.
Do an interview.
Yeah, and finally talk. As he's at post-game right now, we'll see how incensed coach is at the first half scenario. The Giants fall, as Nick Shook said, and that wraps up a Sunday a fun, upset-full Sunday that didn't finish with the upset, as the Giants could not knock off the Buffalo Bills, but the Browns knock off the 49ers, the Jets knock off the Eagles. Topsy-turvy. Every fan base thinks that their team is horrible. They're going to have to shell the entire roster and start over. Your lingering thoughts on this Week 6 Sunday, Nick?
A lot of upsets. As somebody who picked the Eagles to beat the Jets and the Niners to beat the Browns, I was pleasantly surprised. It goes back to the one thing I came down to today after the Jets beat the Eagles was, God, we got to be really close to finishing off that parity circle for the year. I'm pretty sure we're pretty close. Like, somebody get the graphics going, start tracking records. Let's get that thing done. Week 6 would be one of the earliest points in the year. But that's the NFL, man. It's the beauty of it. It's manufactured parity. It's what keeps people coming back, and it's what makes days like today as exciting as ever.
Yep, the transitive property. And again, if college football fans are new to the NFL and they're used to college football discourse, the NFC West is terrible. They've got losses to another division, and when you do the math, this division is too weak. You know, the 49ers are bad now.
Well, yeah, what are the BCS points looking like for the 49ers? It's 2004 again. I need to figure out whether Jason White's worthy of the Heisman or not.
Yes, Jason White. The answer is no. He was never worthy
of
the Heisman Trophy.
He still isn't.
We're humbled that you guys think we're worthy enough to listen to us on this flagship program. I want to shout out, of course, all the guys. We're finishing things up. I'm at home, but no small thought to be able to at least have one part of hosting, one part of this show from the Chris Wessling podcast studio,
and the other part from where your squat rack is in your garage.
Yeah. We're in the garage.
Look, I always get the heat for lifting weights, but let's direct some of this to you right now because you literally have one right behind you. You know, let's just get that in there for you.
Well, the thing
there
is,
it is.
We got that.
This. Hear that?
Yeah, I don't know.
That was made for me.
That guy's setting off all kinds of lunk alarms. No. These are bad reps.
No.
What? Yeah. They got to get you a better weightlifting drop than that. We're gonna have to actually have you pounded some more. But the work's not done for Nick Shook because he's right back doing the Monday night episode of the Around the NFL podcast. Jane Slater stepping in. Little Cowboys Chargers. Fired up for that one. It's the Kellen Moore, Mike McCarthy revenge game, Nick. You feeling good about that?
Yeah, I'm very excited about that because so far the Mike McCarthy play calling experience has been very up and down for the Cowboys. And meanwhile, the Chargers have been steady. They haven't been super explosive, but they've been steady. I love a little animosity. I can't wait for their midfield handshake, even though Kellen Moore is not a head coach and may not even be on the field and will be in the booth instead. Stay tuned to find out.
I can't wait because, again, there can be only one good team. Every team at the end of this year, somebody's going to hoist a trophy and everybody else is bad and done a horrible job.
Terrible.
That's just the way things go. For Nick Shook, I'm Patrick Claybon. Thanks for listening in to a globe-spanning flagship episode of the Around the NFL podcast. Nick and Jane Slater will see you guys on Monday.